Hello, friend. Rippin with Hill of Beans Fundraising. And this is a presentation on the top 10 myths about fundraising. These are 10 myths that I see that many fundraisers believe, and in doing so, they keep themselves from raising a significant amount of funds. And so I am going to do my best to try and debunk these myths today to help set fundraisers free. So, myth number one is the myth that you must have a perfect plan. And so, what I see so often when people jump into fundraising is this concept, this idea of perfectionism that keeps them paralyzed. They're worried that every person that they meet with is going to expect a full blown budget and a 3 year, 5 year, 1 year, 10 year plan, and they're worried about having all the little details and all the answers to every question that will arise in a fundraising meeting. And I'm here to tell you that those types of fundraising meetings are few and far between. I rarely run into a donor that needs all of that information. Most of the time, the donor is evaluating number one, me and how I present, and whether or not they think I can execute upon the mission. And then they're evaluating the mission from a very sort of 30,000 foot view, conceptual view of, what do you do? How do you do it? Those types of things. And occasionally they'll want to get into some of the finer details, but rarely. And even if they do want to get into the finer details, it's always okay to simply say, hey, let me shoot you an email following up with more information on that. So, myth number one, you must have a perfect plan. Don't buy into it. It will keep you paralyzed and keep you from moving forward into raising more money. Myth number two, your board or committee is going to raise a significant amount of funds. Now, there's probably people out there in the nonprofit world that are doing it better than I am, and they have found a way to motivate their board and their committee to raise a significant amount of funds, or maybe they're just structured in a way that makes that really easy. But at this point in my nonprofit career, I would say I've got a really quality board. They're functioning really, really well. But with that said, I still raise 95 to 99% of the funds that come into this organization. And as a young nonprofit employee, I often had a lot of frustration centered around the fact that it seemed as if the board and my committees never really helped, never really got engaged and on board in helping with the fundraising piece. And I wasted a lot of energy being upset about that, complaining about that. And the sooner I was able to just digest that, hey, a large portion of the fundraising is going to fall on me, the better off I was in my fundraising efforts. So, myth number two, your board or committee is going to raise a significant amount of funds. Myth number three, and you see this on the front end with a lot of folks, the mission is going to explode right away. Everyone is going to get behind it. You have to remember that the mission that you are fighting for is more important to you than it is nearly every single other person you're going to talk to. And because of that, your level of excitement and passion and enthusiasm is not necessarily going to be shared by the rest of the world. And that's okay, right? Each individual has their own particular passions, interests, calling, whatever you want to call it. And the organizations that just explode in popularity right away are few and far between, right? Oftentimes, what we see is an organization that's been around for 10, 15, 20 years, and they grinded it out, right? They were grinding for many years before the explosion actually came. And so, in many ways, you've just got to continue to work hard, continue to do the right things. I do tell that every fundraiser that time is an important component in all of this. Just continuing to do the right things over a period of time can really help you start to raise more funds. Myth number four, fundraising strategy is difficult. This is just not true. Fundraising strategy is incredibly simple, right? I break it down into three categories. Number one is connect, number two is share, number three is ask, right? Connect with people on a mass scale, share the vision, share who you are, share what you're trying to accomplish in a compelling way. And then lastly, ask, right? And if you're doing those three things consistently over time, you're going to raise funds, right? Fundraising strategy is not challenging. It's not rocket science. It's just a matter of getting out there and doing it repeatedly. And that's really where I see the challenges, right? So many fundraisers don't struggle with strategy. They struggle with the mental and emotional roadblocks that arise in the very difficult, rigorous process of raising funds. So, myth number four, fundraising strategy is difficult. Myth number five, you need to project an image of thriving. Donors don't want to hear about mistakes or challenges. I couldn't disagree with this myth more. You need to project an image of authenticity. That's what you need to project an image of, right? Of truth, of leveling with people, of showing them plainly where you're at and what you need. So often organizations think, or people think, that nobody will give to my organization unless they think we're a thriving organization, right? And that's just not true. If you're not thriving at the time, you can tell them, hey, this is where we're at, right? We got $5,000 in the account. I don't even know if I'm going to get paid this month, but here's the vision, here's what we're trying to accomplish. And people will get behind that, right? People resonate with real truth, authenticity. Those are the types of things, right? Transparency, vulnerability. Those are the types of things that people can really rally and get behind because it shows them a picture of their life too, right? Life's not Instagram, right? Life's not all the pretty pictures. It's the ups and downs, the lefts and rights, the sides. And it's about persevering in the midst of those. And if you can show them that, hey, we've got some challenges going on, but we're determined to continue in this mission and persevere, I think you can really get some people behind what you're trying to do. Myth number 6, asking for the minimum is the best way to get people to say yes. This is another common approach that I see in the nonprofit world, right? We're so worried about asking people for big amounts of money, right? It's just like, hey, if you could just give, $10 a month, that would be really helpful toward what we're doing. And I'm not poo-pooing on the $10 a month donor, right? That's a great donor and a great help. But it's okay to ask big, right? People want to be a part of something big. And so often I see the nonprofit leader in this mentality of it's sort of a pity mentality that most of the world has as we think about nonprofits. And the nonprofit leader oftentimes adopts that mentality as well, where it's like, hey, it's this poor organization that needs our help. Let's kick them our spare change and help them down the road, right? Um, Again, not that the small donations are bad, but if you really get in there and say, hey, listen, we're trying not to be one of these nonprofits that's barely skating by. And if you cast that big vision, if you ask big and tell people why you need the money and give them the numbers behind that, people are oftentimes much more excited to give to that type of mentality and that type of mission as opposed to the mission that's saying, hey, we just need the bare minimum to get by. It's less inspiring, if that makes sense. So myth number 6, asking for the minimum is the best way to get people to say yes. Myth number 7, people donate to the mission. This myth is half true. People do donate to the mission, but what they really donate to a lot of times is the person to carry out the mission. The mission is only half of the picture, right? And I would say it's the less important half, actually. So if you've got the prettiest sports car in the world, but you have no one to drive that sports car, or you don't trust the person driving the sports car, then the sports car is valueless, right? Same thing with person and mission. You could have the best mission in the world, but if people don't believe in the person to carry out the mission, they're far less likely to donate toward that mission. So it's really important that you understand that you're selling yourself just as much, if not more, than you're selling your mission. Myth number 7, people donate to the mission. Myth number 8, donor care is the number one priority. Donor care is very, very, very important. I personally send a handwritten thank you note to every single donor that donates to this organization for the first time. And beyond that, of course, I'm making phone calls or going out to breakfast or lunch and touching base with donors. And many of our donors have become some of my best friends at this point. With that said, I think I find sometimes that fundraisers are bogged down so much in donor care that they're not focusing on executing the mission. And a lot of times they're focusing so heavily on donor care because somebody has told them that you've got to reach out to this type of donor this amount of times, you got to reach out to this type of donor this amount of times. I would say do away with the framework for the most part, right? Now don't get me wrong, you want your donors to hear from you. So a good newsletter, those types of things go a very long way. But at the end of the day, I don't think most of our donors have a ridiculously high expectation that I get in touch with them regularly to update them on what we're doing or on my life or anything like that. You know, I think most donors are more than happy with the newsletters that we send out, as well as maybe a once a year touch base. Hey, let's grab a meal, whatever it might be, to really just continue to tell them what we got going on and just develop the relationship in general. So donor care is very important. However, if it gets in the way of you executing upon the mission, then you really need to focus in, on the mission and maybe reconsider your donor care approach. Myth number 9. Great fundraisers are never nervous about an ask. This is, I've been fundraising now for nearly a decade, and this is just not true. There are still plenty of times, and even if I just pay close attention to myself, plenty of times, even if I'm just shooting an email to follow up with a donor that I know is going to donate, right? There's still some level of nerves that are involved there. And they're going into meetings, there's still some level of nerves. Of course, it's gotten a lot better throughout my career, but nerves are simply a part of being in this space, right? You are living in a space where you are asking people to part with money to give to a cause. And we know that money is important to people, right? And so at the end of the day, the nerves are simply a part of it. And the more you can just let the nerves live in the background while you engage with the human being in front of you and love them well, the better off you'll be at fundraising. And myth number 10, and this is one I'm super passionate about. The myth is it's okay to sacrifice yourself and your needs for the mission. And this is simply a focus on self care, right? If I see anything derail fundraisers, it is a consistent overtime dishonoring of their own needs in favor of pursuing whatever mission they're trying to pursue. And so often they don't focus in enough to take care of the mental and emotional bruises that come as a result of living in the fundraising space and executing upon their particular mission, which is oftentimes a strenuous emotional mission. And so I think it's really, really important for fundraisers to understand that you are your number one asset, right? If you fall apart, the mission falls apart. You are your number one asset, and you have to take really good care of yourself. Whether that be taking adequate breaks, whether that be eating well, whether that be, consuming those things that are good for you. It is really, really important for you to ensure that the machine, which is actually a human, don't treat yourself like a machine, but the machine that is you is in good working order, and pay attention to the temptation to overstep your own bounds in pursuit of the mission, right? The opportunities within your mission will always outweigh your capacity. So becoming incredibly good at saying yes to what's for now, no to what's for later, no to what's for never, and really getting locked in, laser focused on your vision, your mission, and your role within that can go a very long way in helping you sustain in this industry over the long haul. All right, you guys, those are the 10 myths. Here are some additional resources if you'd like to plug in with me more or just learn a little bit more about the fundraising space. Of course, we've got the website at hobfundraising.com. We've got videos on YouTube. Just Google YouTube, Hill of Beans Fundraising. I wrote a book a few years back. It's called Hill of Beans, A Fable for Kingdom Fundraisers. This is particularly focused in the Christian fundraising space, and it's a great discussion type book for small groups or even just the individual working through it and wanting to dive deeper into some of the challenges that arise on the fundraiser's journey. And then if you just want to reach out, shoot me an email at tristan@hobfundraising.com. I love this topic. I love having conversations about this topic. I would be happy to speak with any of you and just go back and forth about fundraising. It's a really fun space for me. So thanks, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. Take care.